Welcome back to the Dating Relationship Playbook with Chaz. I have a very special guest. I got author and psychologist Dr. Sarah M. Show. Did I say correct? Did I say M?
Michaud.
Me Show. I'm sorry. Me
That's okay.
Show. Thank you for coming on, Sarah.
Oh my God, it's great to be here, Jazz. I love talking about relationships and mental health and people's happiness, so I'm excited to have a conversation about it.
Awesome, awesome. So when I came across like your podcast and what you do, I always want to give you an opportunity to like share your credentials because what we're going to be talking about it's not like you're just making this up. You have
Right.
education, you have experience to
Yes.
back up what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah. So I'm a psychologist, with a PhD. I mean, MDs, the difference is MDs who are psychiatrists can give medications. I don't give medications.
Okay.
So I'm a clinical psychologist. I specialize in addiction and codependency, and we can talk about that, which is basically a lot about relationships, especially the codependency part. And we can talk more about that. So I also am someone who got sober in 1984. So I just celebrated 42 years of
Awesome.
sobriety.
Congratulations.
Yes. So I'm someone who's experienced addiction and recovered from addiction. Then I also ended up marrying two times, and my second husband relapsed. So my life exploded. And that's where I really started to do a deep dive into the codependency piece, which is, a quick definition is when people are trying to save, fix, or change another person for their own anxiety to go down. For me to be happy, I need you to be different, which comes up in a lot of relationships. A lot of people
Hmm.
get into relationships and think and spend the whole time wanting their partners to change. And that's really a recipe for disaster. So codependency started around the issues with a partner who was an alcoholic or an addict, but it's broadened into really anybody who puts their partner in a position of trying to change them or fix them and not accept who they are. And what happens is the partner gets resentful and my life gets worse. So it really doesn't work for either person.
When you talk about codependency, does that happen beginning the relationship or middle, the end? Like
Yeah.
when does that occur?
Well, it can happen at any point, but really it would happen in the beginning. And I'll tell you a big symptom of someone who's codependent is someone who starts dating someone who has some problems. So I'm
Hmm.
going to date someone and I may recognize in the first few dates that, oh, they might be drinking too much, or they might have a little bit of depression, or they're really in a conflict with their parents all the time, or whatever it is. And I have this feeling like, oh, I'm going to be the one that's going to help them. I'm going to be the
Hmm.
one that's going to change them. I'm going to be the one that's going to make them happy. And that feeling from the beginning is a setup for lots of codependency.
So, are you saying that a person will they seek out a person that may be flawed or have issues, or how does that work? Like,
Yeah, I think there's a radar. Part of what happens, Chaz, is if we grow up in a certain environment where our parents may have some problems or there's problems at home. If we grow up in a certain environment, what's going to happen is we're going to develop certain skills to manage that environment. So, say my mother has a drinking problem and I'm a kid, I'm going to grow up trying to manage that and fix it and make sure my mother's okay. And the reason I do that is because I'm anxious. I don't feel safe. I'm trying to make everything okay in my environment so I can feel okay. So as a kid, you develop these skills. Maybe I become a people pleaser. Maybe I become someone who's always trying to fix someone. Maybe I become someone who denies my own feelings. Maybe I become someone that's focused on everybody else, but not focused on my own happiness. So I develop a bunch of symptoms, and those symptoms are going to manifest in my intimate relationships. So, whatever patterns develop relationally with your parents early on, those are going to be the patterns that come out in my primary relationships. And it's interesting because so many people say, "Oh, I'm never going to marry anyone like my mother or father." And then they get married, and what happens is after a while, they're like, oh, actually, they didn't seem at all like my parents, but they're doing a lot of behaviors like they had. So it's very unconscious. I mean, the fact is, when we're attracted to someone, we go to something that feels familiar. And even if it's negative, I mean, I've had clients that, for example, say their parent had an affair, say their father would cheated on their mother. And the next thing you know, they're dating someone who seems like, they wouldn't do that. But then a little ways into the relationship, they discover they do cheat. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure what that is. It's like a radar, it's like this unconscious radar or attraction to something that we call it in psychology, and I'm going to forget the name, but it's we're trying to gain mastery, the repetition compulsion, which is I'm going to keep repeating something so I can master it. So, say my father was unavailable, I'm going to be attracted to someone who's unavailable so I can eventually get the love of my father. Hopefully, that's
Mhm.
not too complicated. So, we keep repeating a behavior to kind of work out something from childhood. And that happens a lot in relationships with the people we're attracted to.
Do you see that the with being in a relationship with a person that is what if what is the who is the person that is trying to change? Are they what are the names of those? Because I want to make sure I'm the codependent. And can you like share so
Yeah.
I can?
Right. So the codependent is usually the person who kind of, I want to say, sacrifice themselves, but they kind of dismiss their own needs because someone has a problem, and I'm going to now focus on fixing your problem. So,
Mm-hmm.
say, for example, I marry someone who drinks a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
over time they start drinking more and more. What happens is I start becoming more anxious about what my husband is doing. So my life becomes taken over with trying to stop him to drink.
Okay.
And yet it's like we start, getting angry at them. We start telling them what to do. We start trying to control them. And the problem with that is it doesn't work because the
Mm-hmm.
partner just gets upset. What the solution is where I'm going to start setting some limits. I'm going to say something like, honey, it seems like you're drinking a lot, and I need to be married to someone who really doesn't drink. So if you can't stop within the next month or so or go to treatment, I might think of, I might need to move out. So
Mm-hmm.
if I share what I'm going to do, that's going to have a much bigger impact than me pestering, bugging, yelling at my partner.
Mm-hmm. So the person you got the codependent, and then is it a name for I don't want to call
Well,
them a
it's the
victim,
person
but
I'm trying to change.
okay,
In the
okay.
old days, it was someone with an addiction problem,
Mm-hmm.
but it could be anyone. It could be my husband who's depressed, or my husband who works all the time, or my wife who is, obsessed with our kids and never has time alone. And I keep trying to get her to change and stay home with me, but she won't do that. What happens is I start changing my behavior to change the other person. So say for example, I'm married to an angry guy, right? And it's a real problem in my relationship. I start believing that if I start to change my behavior and stop doing things that he seems to get angry at, you know, he'll change. But the thing is, his anger is about him. His
Mhm.
anger isn't about me. And if I change my behavior, that means I'm trying to become someone to change my partner's feelings, and that doesn't work. I can't change for anyone else. I need to allow them to change. But what happens is I'll start thinking their problems are my fault,
Mhm.
right? And really, it's about separating. We say our hula hoops. I need to stay in my hula hoop. I need to look at my problems. I need to look at my feelings, my thoughts, my behaviors. And I need to let my husband or partner or child or boss or whomever be responsible for their behaviors. It happens a lot with parenting these days because a lot of parents, especially in a time of social media, are over functioning, doing too much for their kids, getting
Mhm.
in, and, over managing. And it's really because the parents are afraid of letting the kids have consequences or have failures or get the C on the paper. But it's not the parent's job to stop the child from having consequences. That's the
Mhm.
child's job. And it really limits the growth of the child. So that's an example also.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
What are so if I'm in a relation or if I'm looking for I'm dating, what are
Yes.
some indicators that a person may look for so they can just be in a healthy relate, obviously
Right.
individuals have flaws. What are
Right.
some
Of
ways
course.
of yeah, what are some indicators that a person can look for to go into a healthy relationship and not
Right.
get
Right.
in a relationship with a person that they have to change?
You know what? That's a great question. I mean, it's the $1 million question, right? Because so many people struggle with relationships. This is the thing, and this it may sound super simplistic, but I think we have to be really honest with ourselves. And I think what happens is we start dating someone, we see a certain behavior, like say they're mean to the waitress at the restaurant, or they talk the whole time on the first date and they don't really listen, or they're unavailable when I try to call them. So early on, in that first few weeks or months, we certain things happen, and our minds say, well, I don't really know. I mean, maybe that was a one off. I mean, they have all these great qualities. I'm attracted to them. They're really hot and they have a good job and they have this.
Hmm.
I'm in a, what I call rationalize. I'm going to rationalize. I'm going to say, oh, maybe they got upset with the waiter because they had a bad day at work, or maybe they're just not nice to me tonight because of some other reason. So we start rationalizing, which is making excuses for people's behavior. So if you're on a few dates and you notice you're starting to spend time rationalize or minimizing, saying it's not that bad. Oh, he only yelled at me once. Oh, he only treated his mother poorly that one time. If you notice you're trying to rationalize and minimize your partner's behavior, that's clearly a sign. Because this is the thing,
That's good.
we know. We know inside. I mean, and that's the thing that's so important when you start dating is trusting yourself. I think what happens is we say to someone, geez, you got mad at the waiter. And they'll say, oh, well, they were a jerk. Or they'll
Hmm.
blame someone else. And they'll convince us that their behavior was okay. But I really believe it's when we start dating, it's about trusting what we see and what we feel.
Mhm.
Because I think it's very easy to, like, I think you mentioned, like, see a red flag and say, oh, that's not a red flag.
Mhm.
He's just not in a
Mhm.
good mood or
Mhm.
whatever. So, one of the things I talk about is called walking two tracks. So if you are on train tracks, right? There's two tracks. And this is the problem with dating is you meet someone and you get out of your mind excited or you're out of your mind attracted. And all of a sudden, your entire being is focused on this. I've had clients come in, Chaz, and say, I met the woman I'm going to marry. And they've had one date, right?
Yeah.
Or she's the man, he's the man of my dreams. He's the perfect person. He's got this and that. And the fact is, they don't even know this person.
Mhm.
So, one of the things I talk a lot about is part of dating is walking two tracks. And what those tracks are, one track is noticing, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so attracted. We're having so much fun. Those first 3 months of a relationship, I've read, there used to be this book called Love's Executioner. Anyways, it was about he said the first 3 months of a relationship, people are completely delusional, meaning you really don't see who the person really is. You see what you want to see. And
Mhm.
so it takes time to be aware and to really notice what is this person like. Excuse me. So you're walking these two tracks. One track is the excitement, the fun you're having, the attraction. And if you start becoming physical, forget about it because then all the
Yeah. Yeah.
hormones and
Yeah. Yeah.
everything starts happening.
Yeah.
So my advice, which people don't like, is delay that as long as possible because it really gets you off in this, what I call pseudo intimacy. You have this physical intimacy, but you're actually not intimate because you don't
Mhm.
even know the person. And it
Mhm.
creates this delusion of that you're really close, but you're not. Okay, so that's one track. The other track that you're walking simultaneously at the same time is taking notice of facts. Facts, not feelings,
That's good.
facts.
I like
Okay?
that.
Because one track is preoccupied by feelings. You are just all in the feelings. The other track is, oh, does he have a job? Does he go to his job? Is he kind to people? Does he respond to me in 24 hours? Is he answering my phone calls? Is he cagey? Does he have friendships? How does he relate to his friends? Is he talking about past relationships in a positive way, or is he blaming his oh, that woman, is it always the other person's fault? Or does he take responsibility for what happened in the relationship? Does he do drugs or alcohol? How much? Does he take care of himself? Does he exercise or eat well or whatever? Things that are important to you, I would start noticing. And I would also know before the relationship begins what is important to you. I mean,
Mhm.
if you want children and after date three, your partner says they don't want children, believe me, I have had
Mhm.
clients say, oh, but they might change their mind
Mhm.
when they told you that's their reality. So,
Yeah.
again, it's so important to know what the facts are when your feelings are so out of control. All right, I'm
That
rambling.
is that is awesome. You
Yeah,
that
it's
was I
important.
liked it. I like the two tracks, because it seems like we do ignore. I mean, those can be considered that second track. The facts can be considered red flags if we kind of just go off the track that we're of our feelings.
Yes. And if you're really kind of like thinking in that delusion, like I'm in love with this person after 2 weeks, it's going to be hard to acknowledge facts. That's why it's so important to literally say to yourself, wait a minute, okay, they don't treat people that work at restaurants well. I've noticed that, and I have evidence for that. Or they never call their parents back when they call. I'm just throwing out
Yeah, yeah,
examples,
yeah.
whatever it is. Or they tell me they're going to meet at 7 o'clock, but they're always an hour late, or whatever. Like, it's really hard. But the thing is, it's say to yourself, it's much easier to end a relationship in
Hmm.
those early times, rather than spend 2 years dating thinking they're going to change when you saw it in the first month,
Yeah,
but you didn't
yeah.
want to acknowledge it.
When you're when you're on that second track, is it would you suggest, or is it okay? Is it reasonable to have a conversation with some of those facts? As far as like, hey, I noticed that you were talking to the waitress in the
Yes.
inappropriate way, or it was disrespectful. Can you address that?
Great
Before it go.
question. Great question. Okay. This is the thing I would say. Yes. And I mean, it's funny because when I was writing notes to talk to you, I wrote communicate, communicate, communicate. Like the biggest skill to develop in a relationship is to be able to communicate. And not in a way where you're focused on them and necessarily blaming someone, but really important to say, yeah, that's a great way of saying it. Geez, when it's really good to focus on yourself. So a way to say it might be, wow, honey, it seems like when we go out to eat, I get super uncomfortable because it seems tense when you're ordering your food. You seem really edgy with the waiter, or you seem really dismissive with them. Is that just like, do you have a thing with, at restaurants, or is
Yeah.
that like, or do you feel angry or whatever? So this is the thing. It's so great that you asked this question because what's the most important thing that's going to happen right now? Their response.
Hmm.
This is the key. If they can respond in a way where they validate your experience, which is, wow, I'm sorry you're upset when we go out to eat. Like, wow. Do they respond to that? Or do they say, why are you getting so upset? Like, I'm not
Hmm.
angry. That's when you ask someone. In fact, this is such a key part, Chaz, in the beginning of a relationship that when you have something that kind of bugs you, getting through this first conversation of addressing something uncomfortable is a
Hmm.
huge sign of the success of the relationship.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember the first time I'd been with my boyfriend for 2 years, and after 6 weeks, I remember I was noticing this certain thing he did. And I thought, oh my God, I like this guy so much, and I need to talk to him about this. And I asked him if we could have a conversation, and we went to this park and we sat down, and it was the greatest conversation. And my
Mhm.
anxiety eased. I asked him about this certain behavior. He said he didn't even know he did it.
Okay.
He asked me what would be helpful to me, how he changed it, and we worked on it.
Okay.
And, to me, if he had said, oh, you're just going to have to live with it, or I don't do that, or whatever. If someone immediately gets defensive and then blames me, that's
Hmm.
the whole gaslighting thing and all that behavior where someone makes me doubt my reality. Like, you
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's a great milestone in a relationship. Can we talk about our feelings? Can we share something that upsets us? And do they listen to us? Very important. Really great question.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to know is that a if you see something that you may be uncomfortable or feel is inappropriate? Is it too early? Is it any time too early to say, hey, you know what, I want to, address this, and then kind of go back based on the responses, what you're saying?
Yes, and I would say it's on a continuum. Okay, so if someone, I don't know, what do you notice? Some small thing. I don't know. I don't know. We can think of some small irritation. They just
Well,
don't do.
for me, I say for me is a habit of being late.
Yeah, happen to be in late. Okay. So that I would say is a workable thing. I
Yeah.
mean, again, if they listen to you and they respond accordingly and you work it out. There's small things and then there's big things. And also, everybody's got a different list of things that are super important and things that aren't. I mean, I might think my partner's kindness is the number one thing, how he treats other people.
Mhm.
Someone else might think, oh no, they need to make $100,000 a year. That's a deal breaker. Or they have to have a house in the suburbs or whatever. I don't know. I'm giving examples. Or they have to have you know, I don't know. So there's big things and small things. And one piece is about someone's character. That's really important. I mean, someone's character is way different than someone's success or failures,
Mhm.
job, money, apartment, all that stuff, car. I mean, all that stuff is material stuff. But really, I think people can get seduced with that rather than people's character. And you can care about both also. You can want someone with good character and someone who's responsible and makes a certain amount of money.
Mhm.
That's fine. But yes, I think it's two things. Is someone willing to look at the behavior, one, or is it something you need to accept? Geez, he, doesn't wash the sink out after he brushes his teeth. Okay, I can accept that. Or some small
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's different, but it really is deciding for yourself what's super important. I mean, I read one time in a relationship book, 70% of the person in the relationship is going to be great, and 30% are going to be things maybe you need to negotiate, maybe you need to
Mhm.
compromise. And again, it depends on what those things are. You don't want to compromise an addiction issue or an
Yeah,
abuse
yeah.
issue or an anger issue or an unavailable issue or what, those things are huge. But or a sex addiction or cheating or whatever. But other small things, sure. I always say there's one thing that's needed in a successful relationship. One thing, and it's willingness.
Oh.
Willingness to look at your own issues and work through them. Because if you're with someone who's blaming everybody else and never owns anything, you can't have a relationship with that person because it takes two people to be in a relationship. We both bring our histories, we bring our hurts, our wounds, the things that have happened to us, and we have to own how those have impacted us and not take them out on our partners. It's not to say we'll never get angry. No, we can get angry, but we can learn how to not take it out on someone and own it
Mhm.
and say, I'm having a reaction right now. And, I'm going to try to calm down before we talk. That's different than just yelling at your partner.
Yeah. One of the things that you talk about, and that made me think, what you were just saying now is I'm curious to know, like, with how a person can set boundaries, as far as um when they have to address that person, or like
Yes.
what are some healthy boundaries in a relationship?
Oh my God, you have the greatest questions. I mean, boundaries are a huge, huge, huge part of relationships. And, there are physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, intellectual, spiritual. I mean, to me, and I am, this is the total truth, 30 years of being a psychologist. one of the number one problems people had was setting boundaries.
Hmm.
And it's because people, for whatever reason, are afraid to ask for what they need.
Hmm.
So, and that's from their history. And like I said, if I grew up in an environment where I needed certain things, but my parents weren't available, then I'm going to think that I can't ask for what I need.
Hmm.
So, what's an example of a good boundary? The one with alcohol or drugs. You can always, say your partner is drinking too much. The example I gave about the drinking. Say your partner, um, when you try to communicate something, we'll go back to this. They overreact and get upset and don't
Hmm.
take responsibility. So, say I communicate to you, Chaz, that I need to leave my job. I'm really unhappy at my job and I want to look for something else. And I know that we might struggle financially a little while, but it's really what I want. And you just start, wait a minute, we can't do that. You can't quit your
Hmm.
job. And you start getting super upset. I can say
Hmm.
then, I can say, Chaz, sounds like you're upset, but it's not okay to be screamed at when I'm
Hmm.
trying to share something that's important to me. So either you can calm down, take some time to calm down, or I can take some time out and we can come back and discuss it.
Hmm.
So I set a boundary. Basically, setting a boundary is saying what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. That's what it
Hmm.
is. Say I'm dating a girl and I'm 25 and my girlfriend, we go out and we're with a group of friends and she's always flirting with other guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can say, honey, I know you're outgoing and I love to be with you and we've been dating a few months, but when we go out, it bothers me when you're flirting with other guys. So I how are we going to work that out? Is that a behavior you think is a problem and you need to stop or not? Because ultimately, if she's not willing to stop it, then I have to decide, do I want to stay in this relationship or not? The problem with asking for your needs to be met is you're going to find out if your partner can meet them or not,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that because the next thing that came on my mind was when do you end it as far as, or what's the next step when you see that that person is not respecting your boundaries?
Yeah, huge. Okay, if you ask for a certain thing that's not met, you have to decide, is this a deal breaker? Right? I've asked my girlfriend to respect me. I mean, literally, you're asking for just respect
Yeah.
and to not flirt. It wouldn't be appropriate for someone to be flirting with other people if I'm dating them. That's just
Yeah.
not okay. Friendliness is one thing, flirtatious behavior is a different thing. So
Hmm.
that's not respecting the relationship. So you would have to decide, can I live with this? And the
Hmm.
thing is, though, it's on that other track. It's really acknowledging, wow, if she's this way in our relationship now, what's
Yeah.
this going to be like later? And
Hmm.
also, it's really a sign of not taking what you need into the picture. And if my partner can't help, if I'm upset, if she doesn't want to help me to feel better and more empowered, then what does that say about our relationship? Why wouldn't my partner want me to be happy? Why wouldn't they?
Doc, what I love that you said, and I definitely will apply this, is you made it to where you're not blaming the other person. You're just
No.
sharing, hey, what this is, what the facts. This is what's going on. This
Yes.
is how I feel, and this is, this is how when you're doing this, this is how you making me feel. So it's kind of
Yes,
not, it kind of not putting them on like a blame game, but it's like you're just expressing your feelings and how you are, feeling based
affected.
on, yeah, how you're affected based on their actions. So I love that you're doing that, that you present it in that way.
Yes, I mean, that's really, I mean, I often say learning how to communicate in a way where, there's lots of books on this, but where you just own what the experience, how it's affecting you, that is much different. I mean, I've been with couples for years, and what happens is, so a couple comes in and the husband says, "Honey, you're always late." And what does she say? "I'm not late that much." Right?
Uh-huh.
So then what he says is like, "Yes, you are." And so he escalates. And then she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're blaming me now." And all that happens is it escalates more and more until you're not even talking about being late anymore.
Hmm.
Now, if the husband said, "When you're late home for dinner from work, I get super worried. And I also am planning everything with the kids. How can we figure out a solution where you can get home earlier so it doesn't make me super anxious?" Or whatever. He says it in a way where he's owning that it's upsetting to him when she's late. And what'll usually happen is she'll say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that was upsetting to you. How can we make a solution?" So it's really owning how you feel and how you're being affected. And that's when your partner can have compassion for you. Otherwise, if you
Hmm.
point the finger and blame, they'll
Hmm.
just get defensive. The
Yeah.
immediate response is defense.
Hmm.
And people can never get beyond that.
Yeah. Is that a technique or a strategy that you use that you would suggest as far as if if couples are having issues, this is the way that you should have that conversation, because a lot of, or have those tough conversations by doing it the way, as far as, hey, these actions impact me in this way. Is
Yes.
that
Yeah, I mean, they're called I statements.
I
And a
statement? Okay.
training I did, yeah, a training I did with Harville Hendricks is a guy that's written a lot of books on couples communication. And he had this worksheet, and we would practice this. And it's called mirror, three things: mirror, empathize, and validate. So you're basically, say you come to me and you're angry and you say, "God, I'm super angry about what you did last night." And I say to you, "Gosh, sounds like you're really angry about what happened last night." I validate what you're saying. I just kind of
Okay.
mirror it. And
Okay.
that to me is the first step that is so neglected in communication. Because when someone comes up to you and says they're experiencing this, the immediate thing someone wants to say is, "Oh, it's okay. You don't feel that bad," or "I didn't mean to do that," or whatever. And the first step is always just saying, "Gosh, it sounds like you're angry. I'm really sorry you felt that way," which is empathizing and validating. And then also is to say, where you come into it is, "I can really understand how that situation would upset you." So it's like there are these three steps. I'm sure you could find these sheets online where it's just the beginning of empathizing and validating your partner. It's like such, it sounds so easy, Chaz, but most couples don't do it.
Mhm.
They just
Yeah.
don't do it. And, so it requires practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It
Um,
requires practice.
one of the things you mentioned a couple, books that you read and that you learn from. I know that you're an author, and I want to you know give you an opportunity to share the
Oh,
book that you wrote. I believe it's on codependency, right?
it's on codependency and addiction. So if
Okay.
anybody in your audience has an addiction or knows someone with an addiction or grew up in addiction, it starts off with my own addiction story. It's half memoir. And then I give a lot of tools and tips about relationships. And you don't have to be in a relationship with an addict to get something out of the book because many people, the word codependent, I think, is so overused. People don't even know what it means anymore. But basically, what it is not being able to be yourself in a relationship. That's what it
Hmm.
really is.
Okay.
It's thinking I need to change to be liked by you or to be or for you to date me. Say I meet someone I really like and their biggest hobby is fishing and I say, "Oh, I love to go fishing." Like that's like you change so someone else likes you or wants to be with you and it just doesn't work in the long run because
Mhm.
eventually, if my partner says, "Hey, we're going to my Montana fishing," and I'm like, "I don't even like fishing," that's going
Mhm.
to be a problem. I mean, that's a small example, but people do this in all kinds of subtle ways. Like we've talked about, they're so enamored by that first track that they don't want to acknowledge your differences. And it's funny because one book I read on relationships talked about these stages. And the first stage, those first 3 months were just complete fantasy land. You're having a
Mhm.
lot of fun, you're delusional, they're the person of my dreams, blah, blah, blah. And around 2 to 3 months, there's a stage called disillusionment
Mhm.
where you're like, I didn't really know they did that behavior. I didn't really know they said they like to go skiing, but they never want to go skiing or whatever the example is. You start noticing these behaviors that kind of bug you and you start seeing the reality of who the person is. And then what happens is war, what's called war, which is you either break up or you go on. And I'm sure you've had this where you've known lots of people that have like these 3 month long relationships and you start arguing or like you need to change and really it's an opportunity to take a look at, geez, what are the positive things of this relationship, what are the negative things, is this someone that's willing to look at stuff and work on stuff or are they not that type of person? And then after we kind of work that out, you can find real love and evolve into what a real loving relationship is. But it takes a while to get to know people. I mean, a lot of times people
Mhm.
don't show who they are for months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it takes time. And that's why I know it's hard to wait on the physical stuff. But I think the longer you wait, I mean, what happens when you wait is if you can get through that initial attraction and wait a few weeks or a month, what happens is suddenly you'll be like, wow, I don't even like this person's personality. But I was totally attracted to them
Uh-huh.
initially, but they're becoming less and less attractive to me now. So you can save yourself a lot of heartache by really staying in reality. Yeah.
Yeah. Doc, I really love that, you've been sober for, did you say 40
Over 40
years?
years.
Over
Yeah.
40 years. Can you go into a little bit of what your story and then how did you
Yeah.
recover and how did you get into the position where you are sober for over 40 years now? Like what
Yeah.
was that
I
process like?
yeah, I mean, I believe you can have a genetic predisposition. Lots of
Oh,
theories
okay.
about
Yeah,
addiction.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
everybody that is born in a from a parent who has an addiction problem becomes an addict, but it
yeah,
definitely means you have a predisposition,
yeah.
which means if your environment starts to get hairy, and you pick up drinking, from the minute I picked up my first drink, I knew I was in love. I mean, I was
Oh, okay.
16.
Hmm.
I immediately felt relief. Like I had had a lot of anxiety as a kid. I had a weight issue as a kid. I felt different. I felt like I didn't belong. all those insecurities and things that kids have, especially in the ages between like 13 and 17. That those
Mhm.
years are really hard. Your peer pressure, wanting to fit in, you start liking boys and you want to be liked back. So when I picked up alcohol, I fell in love. And from the ages of 18 to getting out of high school, the alcohol just progressed. And then it was in the 80s, and I ended up picking up cocaine.
Okay.
And the thing with drugs is drugs, because they cost a lot of money, your morals start to go out the window. So the legal system starts getting involved. They cost money. So our
Mhm.
behaviors get worse and worse and worse to get money. And by the time I was 24, I had already been in jail 3 times. I'd been in trouble a bunch of times. My behavior had gotten, and I grew up in a nice home. So it's like
Mhm.
I ended up hanging around with people that were in this culture of drug use. And I ended up just waking up one morning, basically feeling like I was losing my mind. I was at what was called a drug house, where a lot of people were
Mhm.
hanging out doing drugs. And I kind of woke up and I'd been on a bender for about 3 days. And I felt like bugs were on me. I felt I was losing my mind. And I
Mhm.
got up and I went outside to a phone booth because it was 1984.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I called my brother and I ended up in a hospital. And for whatever reason, I just felt as though I'd gotten a lease on life. I loved it. I got very involved in a recovery community. I went to back to college. Like, I was sober maybe 2 years and I went to college and then to graduate school. And it's not to say, you know, on one hand, my life just took off the minute the drugs and alcohol went down. And on the other hand, life happens. I mean,
Mhm.
you're trying to grow up and mature. And there's a saying that when you get sober, you're the same age as you were when you started drinking and drugging.
Mhm.
So I was 24, but I was really like an adolescent.
Mhm.
I had never gone on a date. I had never, done all these things
Yeah.
that happens when you're an adolescent. So I really had some maturing to do. And then once I got out of graduate school, I moved back to Boston where I live and ended up getting a job at the same hospital that
Mhm.
I'd been in
Mhm.
15 years before.
Wow.
So that's where my psych career started, at that hospital,
Awesome.
which was a full circle moment. And then I just got, interested in working with drugs and alcohol because I had the experience and now I had the
Mhm.
education. And so I ended up getting a job at that psych hospital that I was in, and ended up starting a rehab center about out in the country in central Mass. And that's where everything began. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I mean, it's funny because when people work with addiction, the burnout rate literally is between 3 and 5 years because it can be so heartbreaking. And I
Mhm.
did it for about 30. And so,
Really?
I mean, that's why, during COVID, I wrote the book and I do podcasts now and come on shows like you and trying to do other things. And we have this YouTube channel, Leaving Crazy Town, which is really about relationships. But we
Mhm.
also try to have a lot of laughs and fun because
Yeah.
this stuff can be hard. I mean, it
Yeah.
can be
Yeah.
hard. And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
also share our own mistakes, which I think
Mhm.
people identify with.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
was gonna give you an opportunity to share because I do know you have a podcast, Crazy Town. I did want to give you an opportunity to share what that's about as well.
Yeah, so I met this friend of mine, Finn, during COVID on a Zoom meeting, and he and I hit it off because he had the same sense of humor. And He was in a codependent relationship with his wife, and they were trying to work on their codependency. I was just finishing my book, so we started doing some online codependency groups, and ended up becoming really good friends. He's actually an attorney
Okay,
and has a
okay,
full-time job, but he's 8 years, no, just celebrated 10 years sobriety. And
awesome.
so we just hit it off and started this little channel and try to bring some education to people and have some fun. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
check us out.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it, and I just think it's cool to when you can do something with your friend like
Yes,
that.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I got a little burnt out about talking about trauma over and over again.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
thought, we're going to try to just give some tools and tips. Yeah.
I got a question, but you don't have to. You can feel free to pass on this
Of course.
because I understand like it could be kind of personal. And I know I've been through something similar. Having a very close friend of the opposite sex, is that, or opposite gender I should say, is
Yes.
that, can that impact, can that impact a relationship? Because I know like I've had a few women friends that are really close with me, and then eventually, I had to maybe distance my we have to have a little bit of distance because it might impact the relationship with when we're dating.
Okay. Great question. This is the thing. It's about the boundaries. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's also about, Finn and he was married at the time. His wife has since died, but he was married. And I think to me, it's all about communication and setting boundaries. I mean, I
Hmm.
was friends with his wife, and it was obvious that he and I just hit it off.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so I think we talked about it at one point. Like, wow, it's hard to have those conversations, whether it's about attraction or whether it's about liking someone more, or if someone has feelings. I think it's possible to talk about that stuff and get
Hmm.
beyond it, which
Yeah.
we did. And so we both have had now we're both in a relationship, but I think it's just honoring the friendship. But I will say, his partner and my partner both accept that we're really good friends. I mean,
Yeah.
he lives 2 hours from here, and I just went down, and I didn't stay overnight at his house, but I went down and spent 24 hours, and we recorded a couple of videos and had a bunch of
Hmm.
fun. And the thing is, if you're in a relationship where you have communication and you trust your partner, then
Hmm.
you can let them have friendships with the opposite sex.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
again, if it's some weird, like, say, one of your really good friends is in love with you, that might
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
different thing.
Yeah, I
You know
get
what I'm
that.
saying?
Uh-huh.
But I think it's all about communicating, being honest, and it's about trust.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
This is another incredible episode with Dr. Sarah, the dating and relationship playbook with Chaz. Again, thanks again, Dr. Sarah Michaud.
Yep. Dr.
Michaud.
Sarah's fine.
Okay, Dr. Sarah, I appreciate you coming on. This was really good. Can you share your information, your book, the name of your book? And it's going to be in the show notes, but share your name of your book and then also the podcast with you and Finn. Can you share that before I?
Sure. I have a website, drsarahmichaud.com. If you're looking for any information on me, or you want to email me or see a bunch of podcasts I've been on, there's a mental health podcast called Therapy in a Nutshell, which I've done a few episodes with her. And, if you want to hear about depression or anxiety or some other things besides addiction, I have the Leaving Crazy Town podcast YouTube channel is at Leaving Crazy Town with Finn and Sarah. And my book is called Code Crazy. You can get it on Amazon. And if you can't afford it, email me and I'll mail you one.
Awesome. Again, this is the dating relationship playbook with Chaz. I had Dr. Sarah on, and not just talking about relationship with our significant other, but the dating relationship playbook is about relationship with our family, friends, and God. So thanks again for coming on.